It is 1 a.m. in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 on a Wednesday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. Here are the top stories making headlines at this hour. The Korean government plans to ease regulations on the use of areas freed from greenbelt development restrictions, this to boost regional economy. Korea's February job numbers are out and things are looking good. The number of employed Koreans rose at the fastest pace in 12 years from a year ago. And the vice foreign ministers of Seoul and Tokyo are set to discuss their strained relations this Wednesday afternoon. It's raising hopes for a diplomatic thaw. We'll have those stories and more, but first, let us begin right here in this country. The Korean government has unveiled a set of measures to boost the regional economy. It includes easing regulations and providing stronger incentives so that regional governments can attract more corporate investment. ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye has our top story.
The Korean government is on its way to generating momentum for the nation's economic recovery, and this time the focus is on regional economies. After a meeting led by President Park Geun-hye to foster trade and investment on Wednesday, the government laid out a set of measures to boost the regional economy. The finance ministry said the government will focus on easing regulations and expanding incentives to bolster corporate investment. Through the measures, the construction of commercial facilities will be allowed in areas freed from greenbelt development restrictions. While the government designates certain areas as greenbelts to protect forests and prohibit reckless development, the areas are only used for home construction even after the restrictions are scrapped. Companies that move their offices to outside of the capital area will also have their corporate taxes eased for a longer period of time. Besides easing regulations and boosting incentives, the government also said that it will provide support for business projects led by more than 50 regional development blocks. The projects were proposed by local governments to foster new growth engines. The government expects the set of measures to boost investment in regional economies by around $13 billion. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Now, during this meeting on investment and regional development, President Park said her pledge for an era of public happiness will be realized when each region in Korea develops according to its own unique characteristics. Stressing how the local government and residents of each region know what's best for their own communities, the president highlighted there must be a paradigm shift in which area residents, not the central government, lead the way in creating regional development strategies. In that respect, President Park said the new regional blocks established through agreements by local residents with similar interests will better serve the goal of achieving regional growth. Now, she then added, for everyone in the country to feel the effects of economic recovery, it's important to spread economic optimism throughout the nation. And another topic discussed at the meeting in the presidential office of Cheongwade was the government's ambitious plan to turn Korea into a Northeast Asian oil trading hub. Experts, however, are pointing out that while it sounds great in theory, the country faces daunting tasks to attract foreign participants. Na Hyun-kyung reports.
The government is aiming to make Korea one of the world's largest major oil trading and storage hubs. Trade and Energy Minister Yoon Sang-jik said Wednesday that $1.8 billion in private sector investment will go into securing oil storage terminals that can hold nearly 60 million barrels of oil. The government says it wants this complete by the year 2020. If all goes as planned, Korea would then have a greater storage capacity than Singapore, the world's third largest oil storage center. The government hopes the terminals planned to be expanded in the country's southern cities of Ulsan and Yeosu will help the country serve as a major oil trading hub. Officials plan to ease regulations for global oil traders to do business in the Korean market and provide incentives such as tax breaks if they decide to set up a branch in the country. Around $3.5 billion of economic benefit is expected to be generated in the short run, but looking further ahead, the government says the benefits could easily top $50 billion. But some industry experts don't share the government's confidence, pointing out that building the financial infrastructure for the trading system will be a major hurdle. A researcher at the Korea Energy Economics Institute told ARIRANG News that one of the main problems is that the Korean won is not one of the main currencies used in international trade. The source added that reaching the government's goal of making Korea the world's fourth largest and Northeast Asia's main oil hub will take years, if not decades. 나현경, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, the country's February job numbers are out and it looks positive. The number of newly employed workers in Korea rose at its fastest pace in 12 years in February, amid signs of improvement in the local economy. According to data by Statistics Korea released Wednesday, the number of employed people in February stood at 24.8 million, up 835,000 from a year earlier. That figure represents the largest on-year job growth since March 2002 and comes just a month after the country set a growth record of 705,000 back in January. During the same period, however, the nation's unemployment rate increased by 0.5% to 4.5%. Experts say this is due to an increase in the number of young people who came out in search of work in time for the graduation and recruitment season.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-yong live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market. For the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. Now, commenting on the frosty relationship between Seoul and Tokyo, South Korea's top military officer has stressed the importance of cooperating with Japan on security issues in the face of continued threats by North Korea. Our Kwon So-ah has this report.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Choi Yoon-hee, is on a week-long trip in the United States to reaffirm and strengthen the Korea-U.S. alliance and talk about security issues on the Korean peninsula. He met with his counterpart, Army General Martin Dempsey, at the Pentagon on Tuesday local time for the first time since coming into the post last year. The two discussed a range of security issues, including bolstering combat readiness against North Korea. Choi also emphasized that Japan's cooperation is needed to deal with North Korean issues. Admiral Choi told reporters after the meeting that South Korea, the U.S., and Japan must form a tight trilateral partnership to deal with the constant and unpredictable threats posed by the North Korean regime. He also said he would keep an eye on the bilateral relationship between Korea and Japan while promoting security cooperation between the two countries. He added, however, that this does not constitute an immediate military alliance. Another topic that came up during the two-hour meeting between the two military officers was the transfer of operational control over South Korean forces from the U.S. to South Korea in the event of a war. But Choi told reporters it is not yet time to set a date for the transfer. He also expressed his hope for a comprehensive strategic partnership between South Korea and the U.S. in various fields, including politics, the economy, and society, in addition to their solid military alliance based on 60 years of cooperation. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
North Korea has developed an intricate web of measures to bypass the tough UN sanctions placed on the regime for its banned nuclear weapons and missile programs. A UN report said Tuesday that the North embassies in foreign countries have helped facilitate illegal arms deals. Shin Se-min reports.
Pyongyang has developed a number of sophisticated ways to get around UN sanctions on illegal weapons trading. A UN report issued on Tuesday as part of an annual accounting of North Korea's compliance with international sanctions says that North Korea's embassies in Cuba and Singapore are suspected of facilitating illegal arms deals. The report adds that there is a relatively complex corporate ecosystem of foreign-based firms that help the regime evade scrutiny of its financial dealings. The report also cited an example of a contract by North Korea's national carrier, Air Koryo, to purchase new jetliners in 2012. It said more than 100 payments were structured through 8 Hong Kong-registered companies. While the purchase of civilian aircraft is not prohibited under UN sanctions, the report says such unusual activity could be used as a test run for illegal transactions. Officials at Seoul's foreign ministry have said South Korea will seek steps to implant sanctions against North Korea. Under its numerous UN sanctions, Pyongyang is restricted from shipping and receiving cargo related to its nuclear weapons and missile programs. Importing luxury goods and illicit transfers of cash are also prohibited. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
A North Korea-flagged tanker laden with crude oil from a rebel-controlled port in Libya has escaped its naval escort and is headed for international waters. A member of Libya's General National Congress said Tuesday that the tanker took advantage of poor weather conditions to head for the open sea, and the ships that were surrounding it were not in a position to follow it. The Libyan government said Monday that they had stopped the tanker as it tried to leave the Al Sidra terminal, but a spokesman for the rebels had insisted the ship was still under their control. Well, Libya's parliament, furious with the ship's apparent escape, dismissed Prime Minister Ali Zaidan on Tuesday. Defense Minister Abdallah Al-Tini has been named interim prime minister. The 37,000-ton tanker named Morning Glory is believed to have taken on over $30 million worth of crude sold without the government's permission. Amid souring bilateral ties, South Korea and Japan will hold their first vice ministerial level talks in 8 months this Wednesday in about 10 minutes' time. Japanese Vice Foreign Minister Akitaka Saiki and his South Korean counterpart Cho Tae-yong will meet in Seoul to discuss a range of issues, including Korea-Japan relations and North Korean threats. Now, Seoul's foreign ministry said the meeting should not be viewed as a sign of thawing relations, as Japan has not yet taken the necessary steps that would make that possible. Tokyo has yet to officially apologize for its wartime sexual enslavement of roughly 200,000 women in the early 20th century. Meanwhile, Korea is seeking to list records about the so-called comfort women on the UNESCO Memory of the World Register. The term comfort women refers to the women and girls forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II. Now, during the 2014 session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women in New York City Tuesday, Seoul's Gender Equality and Family Minister Cho Yun-sun announced plans to request the documentations of comfort women in Korea, China, and Southeast Asia be registered on the UNESCO Memory of the World Register in 2017. She added the request will be made in 2015. The OECD voiced concerns that the slowdown in emerging economies may drag on the global recovery. In its interim economic assessment released Tuesday, the international body pointed out that capital flight in some emerging economies is shaking global markets, and this could hurt advanced economies that sell goods and services to those markets. The report went on to say that the U.S. Federal Reserve's tapering is adding fuel to the risks. The agency, however, added that growth forecasts for G7 countries, including the United States and Japan, will continue to be strong, with 2.2% growth in the first quarter and 2% in the second. Apple wants Samsung to pay $40 in licensing fees for every smartphone and tablet sold, following a January hearing between the two tech giants. Now, citing the hearing ahead of a second Apple-Samsung trial in California slated for later this month, the blog Foss Patents said Tuesday that Apple will request that Samsung pay for the 5 patents it was ruled to have infringed. Now, that amounts to $8 per patent per unit, an amount the blog says has never been awarded. Samsung, for its part, will claim that Apple has violated 2 of its patents, and the second trial is scheduled to start on March 31st. Turning now to the latest on the missing Malaysia Airlines plane. The Malaysian military says the plane was in the air for over an hour after it vanished from the radar and traveled hundreds of kilometers off course. It added that the plane's transponder and tracking devices were switched off after the plane veered off track. Now, officials have not ruled out the possibility of pilot suicide, as the transponder signals are controlled by the pilot. In related news, Malaysia's Air Force chief has denied saying military radar tracked the missing plane to the Strait of Malacca, a claim he made on Tuesday. The international hunt for the aircraft, now in its 5th day, has failed to find any trace of the Boeing 777. Over in Ukraine, interim leaders moved to establish a new defense force on Tuesday and appealed to Western nations for aid. Acting President Alexander Tachinov said that the National Guard would be sourced from veteran volunteers, as the country is said to only have 6,000 combat-ready men. Its air force is said to be outnumbered 10-1 by Russia's fleet. Meanwhile, the EU agreed a package of trade breaks to Ukraine worth $700 million. This as the French Foreign Ministry said it could impose a series of sanctions against Russia as early as this week that would include asset freezes and travel bans. And from Russia, ousted President Viktor Yanukovych declared that he remains Ukraine's legitimate president and commander of its armed forces. Acting President Turchinov countered that by saying that Yanukovych left the military in such a poor state that it had to be built effectively from scratch. Over to Washington now, where the head of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee has accused the CIA of spying on Congress. Chairwoman Dianne Feinstein expressed her grave concerns, accusing the CIA of searching committee computers to probe how its staff accessed an internal agency review, thereby possibly violating the principle of separation of powers outlined by the Constitution. Well, CIA Director John Brennan has denied the charges. The clash comes as the Senate Intelligence Committee is examining the spy agency's interrogation and detention program that began after 9/11 during the Bush administration. It's now time for our daily arts and culture segment, and of course our Im Yoon-hee joins us live in the studio with an update. And I hear today she has some news on musicals and plays. Good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. Now, I am a huge fan of musicals, and I'm sure you've noticed Korea has quite the selection of musicals available. And with all the selections, you find some very creative works with some very interesting characters on the stage. Now, here's a look at a couple of musicals and performances that are set to do well this season. Vincent van Gogh, a legendary artist of legendary works. Using technology and music, a new means of enjoying Van Gogh's works is now available. This musical illustrates the passions of the artist's life, while bringing over 800 of his pictures to the stage. His most famous works, such as Starry Night and Starry Night over Rhone, set the backdrop for the stage, and the actors play out the life of one of the most influential painters of all time.
We want to show his personality and the circumstances of his life through each of Van Gogh's pictures. His experiences shape each work, and we want to engage the audience in this way.
Another legendary character back on the musical stage is Sherlock Holmes. After sweeping through the nation through books and TV shows, the sharp-eyed detective is back in his role on the musical stage. In 2011, Sherlock identified the culprit in The Secret of the Anderson Family. And now comes part 2, where Sherlock hits rock bottom, but manages to still find his way back to the truth.
The first season, Sherlock Holmes showed you an eccentric character, but also named the culprit to the crime. Now it's about stopping the culprit from killing again.
World-famous recorder Giovanni Antonini and his Italian early music ensemble are also in town, here to share their pioneering music. Known for his contributions to the early Italian music movement, Antonini and his ensemble will be paying tribute to the fathers of the Baroque period by playing works from Handel, Vivaldi, and Telemann. Focusing on 17th and 18th century style music, the ensemble will be using their trademark traditional instruments, a rare occasion for the Korean audience.
So the last performance isn't, but the first two, they are musicals and they're homegrown musicals. So Yoonhee, what is it about homegrown musicals that would be more attractive to Korean viewers here?
You know, with homegrown musicals here in Korea, they're geared a little bit more towards the Korean audience, but on top of that, they have actors, musical actors that are very popular, and the musical community itself is quite popular here in Korea. And so there's a, kind of differentiation between the regular actors and then the musical actors, and those actors are quite popular as well, which is what makes musicals here so popular, the homegrown musicals.
Right, and I'm sure the storyline and the plot is also very Korean audience friendly as well. Another thing about that is, this of course will be a very exciting treat for Korean audiences, but some of these performances we will see an adaptation of a Western musical by Korean actors and musical directors, so that would be an interesting thing to look out for the rest of the year.
Exactly.
Now, Yoonhee, I hear there's another internationally acclaimed performance that viewers will not want to miss.
So the National Theatre Live has been broadcasting performances from Britain's, some of their best performances and plays there. And so instead of bringing all the cast and the crew over, they show broadcasts of these performances. And so it's a way to see these very nationally acclaimed and awarded performances. And so I think you're going to want to take a look at this and not miss it.
Since its debut in 2007, the play version of Albert and his horse Joey melted the hearts of 4 million viewers worldwide. The award-winning play, performed by the British Royal National Theatre, features life-size puppets made by South Africa's Handspring Puppet Company. But don't be surprised when you're met with a big screen instead of the props. For the first time ever in Korea, the National Theatre Live is showing War Horse as part of their program to share their works with the world. National Theatre Live launched in 2009, and since then has been to over 500 venues worldwide. The play is broadcasted live every time, giving the viewer a front row seat from anywhere in the world.
Well, that's certainly a very new way of watching plays. So why is it that the Korea's National Theatre is bringing these performances in such a manner?
Via broadcast. So you can imagine with something like War Horse, the puppets are life-size. They're very expensive, very costly to transport along with the actors. And so in terms of time and being more cost efficient, they do these broadcasts. And they do record these performances, and they do it so at an angle close to the stage, and so you get the real-life experience. And so that's one of the reasons why they do these broadcasts around the world. And they actually are quite successful nowadays, and people are really catching on to these.
Because I'm sure the way that they film it would be different from a regular filming, right? Because, of course, needless to say, watching it, firsthand, live would be the best way to enjoy it. However, for those of us who cannot do that, they are bringing it via broadcast, and, in order for that to have a lively movement, they would have special camera or filming techniques, yeah?
Exactly, and the fact that they put it up on such a big stage, such as the Korean National Theatre, you get all the more same experience as being there in person.
All right, something that we should definitely check out. All right, Yoonhee, thank you so much for today, and we look forward to tomorrow.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon. As you may have already noticed, looking at the sky, we are expecting rain nationwide today. The good news is the coming rain has finally lifted the dry weather warning across the nation. Now, the temperatures will be very similar to yesterday with the highs of up to 16 degrees. Now, for more details, let's shift over to our satellite map. We have rain clouds all over the nation today. The rain started falling down south in the morning, and it will move up towards the central region as we get further into the day. Now going over to our readings, Seoul will top out at 10 degrees in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak at 10 and 14 degrees respectively. Now moving over to other regions, Jeju Island hits 16 degrees, Dokdo peaks at 10, while Mankumgang tops out at 3. Well, that's all for now, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with Business Today at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.